So we continue with the study of the parables, and we started a couple of Sundays ago, starting with the parable of the lost sheep, Luke chapter 15, and then we also looked at the parable of the lost coin last Sunday, and today, same chapter, Jesus talks about the parable of a loving father and two sons. So there are so many parables that Jesus said. There are about 31 parables in the Bible, particularly only in the three first Gospels. They're called synoptic Gospels because they are similar to each other in many descriptions and events that they have described, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And we don't find any parables in the Gospel of John. It is very unique. And we also said that these parables are not fables. They are not made up stories. These are just simple human stories that Jesus took to compare spiritual truth. The Greek word parabole, that you probably have studied this in geometry, where you have parallel lines, parabole. So there's a spiritual dimension and a physical dimension that go parallel in this world, and no one is immune to it, or no one is away from it. Everybody has to live in this, who lives in this world has to deal with two dimensions at least. There are so many other dimensions physically we have to deal with, but spiritual and physical that we have to live every day, two dimensions that Jesus was trying to teach. And also, these are not myths, or these are not stories that gives you any supernatural like Superman or anything like that. So these are simple human life stories. And another thing that I also mentioned, that these are not to be taken as doctrines. These are not meant for making doctrines out of it, and also not to be used as prophecies. Take some out of context and make it as a prophecy. It is not meant for that as well. These parables are to be studied in context and apply that in our lives, what Jesus is trying to tell us. Many of these parables have been explained by Jesus himself, but some of them he hasn't explained, let it for us to apply that in our lives. As one of the theologians have put it, the listeners and the seekers will get inspiration from the parables, and the uninterested will be uninspired. So it depends on how interested you are in listening to the parables. This parable about the parable of a loving, wealthy father and two sons, most people know, Christians and non-Christians around the world are familiar with this parable, because it is a parable that teaches about love, and love of God particularly, that reaches out to the bottom of your life, even when you are not aware of it. George Murray, one of the great preachers, said this parable is the most divinely tender and most humanly touching story ever told on earth. Charles Dickens described it as the finest short story ever written, and many theologians have described it as the gospel within the gospel. So it summarizes the whole gospel in it. And I sometimes call it the 50% parable, because the first one was one sheep out of 100, which was a 1% parable, and the second parable that we discussed was the one coin that was lost out of 10, which is what? Yeah, that's 1 out of 10%. Here we are talking about one son lost out of 2, which makes it 50%. So that's another way to look at it and remember these stories. But this parable is not really 50%. To me, it is not one son that was lost. Actually, both of them were lost. Because the one was lost away from home, and the other one was lost in the home, like the coin. The coin was lost in the home. The other son was lost, but he was in the home, still lost. He was in the home, he was not enjoying any blessings of the home anyway. So there are three main characters in the story. Like I said, you have the rebellious, you have the responsible, and then you have the remarkable, loving father. So 3 R's. There will be a lot of R's that I'll bring up so you can remember these things. So the younger son rebelled against the father's rules and traditions. That, the Jewish family has a lot of traditions that they have been following, but the younger son decided, I don't want to follow all of these things. I want to do my own thing, to follow all these things about. So he went to his father and he asked for his share. That you heard that he asked for the share and the father gave it to him willingly. So he took the share and he went on with his own life and spent all the money. Sometimes we have children like that in our families, don't we? Not everyone is like the other, right? Not everyone is similar. Our children are different in many ways. There are two boys that I read a story about two boys that a mother got very hard time with them, and they were driving her insane. So she discussed that with her neighbor, and the neighbor told her, I had the same problem with my son, so I took him to the priest of our church, and he straightened him out. So why don't you try that and take them to the priest? So since she didn't have anything to lose, she decided to follow the neighbor's advice and took the two sons to the local priest. So the younger boy was waiting at the waiting room, and then the priest called the older boy in, and then the priest with his black robe and with his beard and all that big looked at the boy, stared at his face and his eyes and said, "Where is God?" The boy was scared to death, and he didn't say anything. He was stunned. Then the priest again asked him, "Where is God?" The boy got so scared and he started looking at, under the table, on the corners and in the books and all those holy items that the priest had, and he thought it would be there somewhere, God would be there. And then he could not find it. Then with a stern and serious voice, the priest asked him the third time with a loud voice, "Where is God?" This time, the boy leaped to his feet and ran out of the office, grabbed his brother by the hand and pulled him out the door, and let's get out of here. They have lost God and they are trying to pin it on us. We have children, different ways and different means. The younger son returned after squandering his inheritance, but received acceptance from the father with the restoration of his full inheritance. That's the gist of the story. We don't have to run away to get lost. You can be in the best church, you can be in the best family, but still be lost just like the coin or the older son that just I remember. So rejecting the joy of the home is a personal choice, regardless of where you are. The older one or the second one, they both decided to reject the joy of the home. One ran away, the other stayed in the home. But both of them rejected or decided not to enjoy the blessings that the father had. Rejection of the home is something that we all do, sometimes knowingly or unknowingly. We want to do our own things. We want to get away from the traditions or the set rules that God has given us as moral rules or social rules that God has set up, and we want to do our own thing and to get free from all these things. The rebellious son was even bold enough to go and ask the father for his inheritance. Generally, in the Jewish custom, I don't know, in our customs too, the inheritance are shared generally after the death of the parents. So in this case, this son didn't really want to wait for the death of his father. He went and asked for it. He was bold enough to go and ask for it. That tells me that he either father dead or he decided that he didn't want his father to have anything to do with his life. and then he left the father's presence to a faraway land. And he had a lot of money. When you have a lot of money, what do you get? Get a lot of friends. That's what he had. He thought he had a good time there. Far away from his father, no rules. So he had a good time there. A mother was telling that she read the parable of the prodigal son to her daughter at the bedtime. And at the end, when she was going to sleep, she asked her, "So what did you learn from it?" After thinking for a moment, she said, "Never leave home without your credit card. Because you will end up losing all your money, but you still have your plastic with you." That's what the mistake he did. Anyway, there is a part of us, each of us, that has played the rebel son in us at some point or other. Continues to be rebellious to God, rebellious to church, rebellious to our traditions, thinking that rebellion is a good thing. A lot of youngsters think that. Of course, rebellion is a good thing depending on the cause that you rebel against. A lot of rebellions happened and social changes happened after that. But when you rebel against certain things for your self-gratification and forget the rest of the society and the people around you, that is when rebellion becomes hurtful and destructive. Adam and Eve started it. They started in the Garden of Eden. They had all the blessings that they could enjoy, and God gave them every freedom to enjoy every fruit in the garden, except God gave some guidelines, except you don't eat from that tree, from which you do that, you will die. Then the devil came, and then started talking to Eve and told her, no, God is lying to you. Soon as you eat from that tree, your eyes will be opened and you will become like God. That's when they started the rebellion. Oh, we want to be like God. You go and read that chapter in Genesis 1 and 2. So Adam and Eve started rebelling against God. They listened to the devil more than they listened to their creator God. The devil told them that God was lying. That's what the problem started. God will never lie. God cannot lie because God is truth. And he cannot lie. But Adam and Eve listened to the devil and believed that God was lying. So they decided to break the traditions and become rebellious. You know the rest of the story. The first man and woman thought that becoming like God is better than what they have now. They believe the devil more than the Creator. We want to do what pleases ourselves and wish God was not around. Rebellion is equated to freedom and lack of accountability. We cannot live in the garden in hiding and wishing God was not around. When a person or society keeps God away, life is not human anymore. People and societies that have rejected God have historically seen moral and social decay. Freedom without restraint is chaos. So it is like a kite. We used to fly kites when we were young. The owner of the kite uses a string to keep it in check. Right? That is your control. The one kite wished that he would break from the string, from the owner's string and break free one day. Let me go, the kite said. And finally, that kite succeeded in breaking up the string and go free. And he said, free at last. Free to fly with the wind. Yes, the freedom from restraint simply put it at the mercy of the horrible wind. And you know what will happen when that happens? It fluttered ungracefully to the ground and landed in a tangled mass of weeds. Free at last, free to lie powerless in the dirt, to be blown helplessly on the ground. We are like that sometimes, that kite sometimes. The Creator has placed certain restrictions. Restraint is a necessary counterpart to the winds of destruction. It can come in different ways. Not only like the rules of the Father, not only like traditions, but there are some restraints that God will allow to happen in our lives. To be sick and be bedridden for a couple of days, or to have a hard time with a child. These are some of the restraints that God will allow to happen in our lives so that we can reflect, step back and reflect and say, hey God, I know what you're trying to do with my life. I commit everything into your hands. Your control is what I need. I don't want to be broken apart from your hands. So those are all restraints sometimes that God allows to happen in this world. One of the parents shared a story, a father shared a story that he and his wife left her 13-year-old daughter at home and went shopping. And as soon as they came back, she had a tummy ache. And she was in the bed and started talking about it and said, what's wrong with you? She said, I have a stomach pain. That's what started. Called her to the side and asked her what happened. She said, I started a stomach pain. And he said, does it feel like a burnt curtain in the house? Then she knew what happened. When the parents went, she played with the matches. And then the curtain got fired. And then she thought she would hide it somewhere under the window and the parents would not find it out. But the parents know. But they wanted her to speak it out. And once that happened, and she said she broke off that burden of sin or guilt in her mind, and then so the dad was sharing that with us, a group of pastors one day, that this is what happens when we break off the traditions or break off the rules that are set by God, moral rules and social rules that God has set. It will eventually burden us with our guilt and then become decaying in the society. God gives us adversity and restrictions to follow so that we can grow and gain strength from them. Freedom without order is anarchy. Freedom without restraint is rebellion. Freedom without responsibility is foolishness. So let us commit to God and His rules. So then the rebellious son got what he asked for. The father could have easily stopped him, saying that I'm not going to give you. But he's a loving father. He said, if you want it, here it is. It's your choice. But I like you to stay with me. But that's not your choice. Then it's up to you. He got the inheritance and he left. And then he spent all the money. Like I said, he didn't have a credit card to charge it on after that. And so he lost his friends, lost his food. He didn't have anything to go back to. And then what happened? He finally started job hunting. Then he got a job he never wished in his life for. He got what he asked from his father and then some. Now he is looking for a job. And he got a job to feed the pigs. For a Jewish boy, to feed the pigs can be the lowest point in his life. A college student, after graduating from college, he wanted to work with animals. He loved animals. So he went to the local zoo and asked them if he can actually get a job there. And the zookeeper said, I don't have any openings now. But the kid was so insistent, and he pressured him, and he said, I would do whatever you want me to do, but I like to work with animals. So then finally the zookeeper said, okay, we have a gorilla. We had one and it died, and we won't have another one for a month. So what I want you to do is to dress up like a gorilla and just walk around the cage and act like a gorilla and entertain the visitors when they come. Okay, you'll take it? So first day on the job, he is in suit and he's jumping about, and he's so glad that he got the job. And then he started making all kinds of movements like a gorilla, and even started shaking his hands with the people through the window, the bars. And then he started hanging from the bars and playing around with so much force that one of the doors got open. That door was the door to the next door lion. So he got really scared. He didn't know what to do now. So he started screaming and he said, hey, come, help, I am not a gorilla, I am a man in a gorilla suit. And then the lion quietly came through the door and came to his ears and whispered in his ear, said, shut up or we'll both get fired. You will end up in a job that you ever thought you didn't imagine it, in the worst nightmares. The rebellious son comes to realize that this fun life he has been seeking is not all he thought it would be. It turned out to be his one of worst nightmares, keeping the pigs. The Bible says that all are lost. All people are lost in sin and gone away from God. The reality is that the most beautiful and the innocent baby is a sinner because we are born in sin. One of the pastor's wife shared a testimony that she had to be admitted in an alcoholics recovery center. That was her lowest point in her life. By society standards, she was with the outcast and the broken and the ashamed. But that was her opportunity to open her eyes to see and experience what other people go through in situations like that. While she was spending her time, it actually changed her life. She said they offered kind words, a touch and a silent acceptance, and telling her that you are not alone. No one gave advice, no one condemned, no one judged. The hospital patients, they comforted each other with the experience that they had to go through. God wants each of us to come back to His presence. Even though we want to break loose, you can be a pastor or you can be a pastor's wife. It doesn't matter what you are, where you are in life. In our wandering, Christ unites us. In our foolishness, He gives us His wisdom. In our weakness, He gives us power. We no longer have to be depressed or angry. Instead, in our brokenness, we can come to Christ because He is our Redeemer and He will restore us. It is so sweet to trust in Jesus and to take Him at His word, just to rest upon His promise and to know that says the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, now I trust Him, in the Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, praise to trust Him more. Oh, how sweet to trust in Jesus, just to rest in blood. Yes, 'tis sweet to trust in Jesus, just from self to